how do you think the mayor's office can help the city really support the district's new process?
Well, we begin by not treating OPS like it's a foreign country. There has been over the years a great amount of separation, and then for a while we thought unless the city ran the schools, they couldn't have a relationship with the schools. And I mean, we've done such a great job running the city, we should also run our schools, right? The first really, and David Kakashiba's on the school board, and I give him high credit. They've hired somebody who is very dynamic, very contemporary, as their executive leader, Tony Smith Jr. And I believe that the nexus should be between the superintendent's office and the mayor's office, and we ought to be supporting his agenda and the agenda of the public schools. We ought not to be creating our own agenda. We ought not to be critiquing his agenda, because if you go into working with young people in any capacity, from teacher to childcare, whatever it is, then they are ahead of where we are. And I don't want to learn what they know. I want to know what they need. And so I figured out, because I'm really smart, public safety is something we do, we provide. How do we provide for safe passages to and from school, literally? Libraries and literacy, we have programs and services there. Recreation, arts, I mean, we have an incredible arts community in Oakland that we don't even tap into. Now, we're not going to organize them because they're like crickets. They're not going to be organized. You know, they say herding cats. Well, that's like putting a bunch of crickets in a box and then opening it up. That's not what they want. Artists are not artists because they want to be organized and line up in rows. But there's a tremendous resource there that we're not tapping into. So what we need, it seems to me, and my commitment flat out, is that I've read Tony's plan. The school board has validated it. You know, if I thought I knew what I was doing, I'd sit down and make all kinds of changes. I don't know what I'm doing. I was in the classroom, and all I know that I want to do is be left alone. Let me teach. Close the door, let me teach. And I never had to teach to a damn test either. You know, I taught what I thought I was trained to do, and my instincts taught me to do. So I don't want to make it any more complicated than that. This administration will back the hand of the new administration in the Oakland public school system, and do what we should be doing and supporting what needs to be done in the areas that we have core responsibilities, and those are the ones I articulated.
So how would you support changing that specific climate?
That is all, it comes back to just political will and leadership. You know, they didn't want us in Havens Court when we were out here, when I was a county supervisor. They didn't want us in Madison. We started a midnight basketball program there because what we did was we just kind of bogarted, and a lot of you don't know what that means, we just kind of blasted our way in, sat down and said, okay, you know, you're serving these kids, we're serving these kids. We only have 50 cents, we need $5, so how are we going to make that 50 cents go further? And we got it done. And, you know, we did it. We did it without any help from the superintendent's office. You know, that was that was like you had a 5-year plan to be able to meet and then have another task force. We just blew our way through the doors. We relied on our community-based organizations. One of the things I did with the county is that I got my colleagues to agree that we had to raise the amount of money that we were giving to community-based organizations because they were paying their people 35, 40, 50 cents on the dollar, and then the county would come along and snap them up and pay them twice as much. So we brought what we called stabilization. We brought it up to 85% of parity for across-the-board jobs. So there is absolutely no reason that political leadership, political will cannot get, and we've been talking about this stuff for 30 years. And you can still drive around and see a school site and a public park with a chain link fence locked, and that there will not be any locks, and we're not going to have. That's where I'm talking about seamless stuff. Now I've talked to Tony about that. I've talked to members of the school board. Everybody's in agreement, and the old buzz is the humbug has been, well, the unions won't allow you. The unions won't let you do that. That's just flat out not true. You got to know how to deal with it, but it can get done.
How do we possibly introduce a parcel tax? And how would you feel about that? And then what do you think your priorities would be with that funding?
Before we even talk about a parcel tax, we have a very small window left. The state of California, 2 years ago, the legislature increased the sales tax in California by a full penny for budget balancing purposes. That is due to expire at the 1st of July next year. Under state law, we could, as a city, go back to the voters on a majority vote, not a 2/3 vote like a parcel tax, on a simple majority vote. We could ask the voters to retain a half cent of that sales tax that is currently going to Sacramento. It's not a tax increase because it's already allocated, it's already levied, and it's not going to go to Sacramento. The money's going to be spent here. In a modest economy, that's worth about $17 million a year. That would be my first proposition. And I'm not just, I try to get, encourage the city to do this in the springtime, but for a variety of reasons, what we ended up with is a Measure X parcel tax. But that would be the first thing I'd do, and then I would on the prototype of what's the city work in the city and the county and the schools work in common, then I'd create a priority list according to that. And then y'all probably there'll be a lot of tension because we're going to be talking 0 to 3 and then 7 to 9. Everybody's mission is important, but that's when you have to make really hard decisions. The leadership has to make the hard decision. Oakland is not really good at making those tough decisions. Political leaders, they like you to do it. But if you've got $100 million worth of need and $17 million worth of opportunity, you've got to make the choices. But I am absolutely convinced if we didn't do that, we go, and maybe we go with a parcel tax, but the parcel tax, again, I think has to be much more broadly constituted. It shouldn't be dedicated to police services or dedicated to, it has to be, I think the people, I can fund the police department, right? I could bring the 80 cops back right now. I know where the money is, and I would do it. So we don't need to go to the voters and ask for more money for cops. But I do think we can go to the voters and make a credible case that we don't have enough money to do anything else to help with our young people.
So how do you really feel about focusing and supporting our school-age children?
Well, I can give you, I say I'm absolutely for it. I'm really for it. And you should not buy anything with that promise because it's worthless. We have to decide. You've got a whole panoply of things, services, and programs here in Oakland. There is no document that even can say that it's a network without coordination. What's the redundancy here? What's the duplication? We're spending a whole lot of money on services right now and I would bet you that if you had to choose one organization, you could find one that would be superior to the others doing the same thing. You got to make those tough calls. That's not being done. That's because we have no youth policy. We have no standard to measure this. All the data's there, the same way that we talked earlier with Ms. Levine about, we have studies from here to the end of the earth about what we should be doing. We know the impact violence has on young kids and their development. And we know why people are dropping out of school. They start and then they don't graduate. But we got to go first with what we got, and then I think you can build. And I'm not talking about a long period of time. With the technologies available right now, you could easily document where the money is. I would ask you this. How many evaluations of programs have you seen? How many evaluations have you seen of programs? And how good are they? Some are and some aren't. What happens if the ones that aren't good, they continue to get funded? Because nobody wants to make those decisions. At my age and in my career, I ain't afraid of nothing. I ain't planning to run for governor. I ain't closing bars in Sacramento like Jerry did, and he ran out of that time, so now he wants to do this. This is what I do. This is where I've been. I've got a record as long as the month, and you know what I've done and what I can do. And if we're spending money on programs that have been entitled but are not producing, and I know what I'm talking about because there are some programs in here that I would defund. But you have to have the stones to do it. And that's just leadership. That's all. You know, that's what you're supposed to have with a leader. That's why you elect people to do that.
You've mentioned that there should be a comprehensive youth policy for the city. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it's simple. You've got, you know, you all have, I could read all your mission statements, condense them into a set of priorities. Okay, that's the wish list. That's the need list. Then you go through with all the money that we're spending right now, and you see where it matches. You know, it's like a ladder. And then you make some, you know, that's all statistical. And then you start getting into the emotional, which is the hardest. But then you apply what you know, what you've seen, who you know, who you trust. There are people in this audience right now that they could tell me today is Sunday, and that would be good enough for me. You know, I'm willing, rather than go find a calendar, I'm going to trust the person that tells me. If they're wrong, I'll ask for forgiveness. So I don't, you know, to me, creating a youth policy is simply saying the youth of Oakland are the most important thing that we have to serve. Everything else should texture out from that, whether it's public protection, education, arts, and let's evaluate what we have, and let's, as early as next year, we have a budget, let's readjust. And let people come in and make the case. I would work a lot more closely with the county and see if we can pyramid our dollars there. They provide the health care services and a lot of the other services. I, honest to God, just don't think this is all that complicated. And I also don't believe that if we could have talked it through and talked it and succeeded, we'd have been done by now. We've been talking about this. You know, I was elected to the Board of Supervisors in 1986. We're having the same conversations in City Hall that we had in 1986.